Not too long ago, I posted a question on the Subnautica Amino on the Amino app. What makes Subnautica special to you? And I've gotten a variety of different answers on that post. So, I think it's about time I answer my own question, but instead of inside that post, it's going to be in video format. So, what makes Subnautica special to me? And why do I keep saying as of recent that it's my favorite game? Even though a year ago I made a top 10 list where it was my second favorite game. Yes, people, opinions can change. Subnautica is now my favorite game currently. And of course things can change. But what makes Subnautica special to me? What separates it from the hundreds of other survival games that have been released over the years? Well, it goes down to several things. Before we go into what about the actual game itself, let's go over the developers. I have been nothing but impressed with Unknown Worlds Entertainment. They started out in 2014 creating, like, Subnautica was a random project idea they had just at the back of their mind, just like, you know what? Let's try our hand at this whole survival game thing, but while we're at it, let's make it underwater. Right? And put all these alien fish and things in there. Try something new. Because the previous game they made, Natural Selection 2, was okay received, but it wasn't really, a major impact on the gaming industry. If you don't know Natural Selection, and Natural Selection 1 was a mod based off of Counter-Strike, I believe. No, Half-Life, sorry, Half-Life. Where it was partially an FPS game and partially like a wave defense type thing. And Natural Selection 2 was an upgraded version of that, with better graphics and some new stuff as well. And an interesting thing that I'll get to that actually in a minute. So their experience was with action FPS games and tower defense. So this was really something new for them. This is a big leap of faith for them to be leaving their comfort zone like this and making a survival game instead of let's say, Natural Selection 3 or just another FPS game. But as you can see, it worked out beautifully. Or I guess you can say, excuse me, swimmingly. Bad jokes aside, Subnautica was launched in very early access in 2014. And it didn't really have that much to it. It was just, basic premise of the game. You're in a life pod, out, and the Aurora crashed, and that was it. You're just kind of swimming in this oceanic planet and see some crazy fish. You have brief mentions of a story with, the Aurora being there, like, how'd you crash, and whatever. And that, since you're in a life pod, what happened to all the other life pod survivors? Those questions didn't really get answered for a long time, but it was the base of... It had the base works of a game. It was very buggy, and there was plenty of systems that were definitely tweaked and changed before the final release. And even in this gameplay here, this gameplay is from May 2017. Lots of things have been changed since 2017 as well. But it's interesting to see how far it's come. Used to, there was a buildable structure called a fragment scanner, which you had to create if you wanted to decode blueprints from fragments you found. There was no item scanner, no handheld scanner, so if you wanted to scan something, you would actually pick up the fragments, and it would take up inventory space. And then you'd have to, put it in the scanner and wait for it to do its thing, which took a bit of time, actually. But Unknown Worlds promised us, while they said, hey, the game's incomplete, it's got plenty of bugs, plenty of glitches, and plenty of issues. Optimization wasn't great, and there's not much going on here. But they promised that the end result was going to be worth it, and that they were going to stick with the project and see it through. And, you know, YouTube covered it. There were users like Paul Swears Jr. who did basic gameplays of it. But that was in its very early alpha stages. But over time, bigger YouTubers like Markiplier and Jacksepticeye picked it up. But even then, it was still in pretty much early alpha stages, so there really wasn't that much to do. But just like Unknown World said, they stuck with it. And having YouTubers like Markiplier and Jacksepticeye play it brought a sense of popularity to the game, which definitely boosted player numbers and people's interest in the game, which of course would help the company. So as time progressed, Subnautica really started to take off. It was doing, as far as reception from the players, people liked it. And slowly but surely, it was developing a story. And then we hit January 23rd, 2018. The game is released. Or it might have been the 26th. Sorry. I might have got that wrong. But in any case, late January of 2018, Subnautica is released. And the reception it got was incredible. It was on the top sellers list for the longest time. So Subnautica in itself is a testimony to the dedication and the truthfulness of Unknown Worlds. As Unknown Worlds was completely transparent about the game's development. They had a Trello page where they had stuff that they were working on open to the public. You want to see what's going to be added next? Okay, check the Trello. You see here, we're working on the end game here. So you can expect to see some of this stuff being implemented soon. What's this? The Cyclops is getting a separate fabricator specifically for upgrades? Well, look here. This is where it's being changed. They left everything. They were very transparent with what they were doing, which people respected. And they could easily see what's coming down the pike just by looking at the Trello. So there was no, there were really no surprises, really, with Unknown Worlds. I mean, again, the game itself is full of twists and turns. But it was not like anything really crazy, as in they didn't add something like Hello Games did with No Man's Sky. They didn't promise anything that wasn't added to the game. Everything they promised was added. Or if something like the Terraformer was removed, they gave a worthy explanation of why before they released the game. So everybody knew what was going to be in the game, and they didn't make any unreasonable promises that they couldn't deliver. All the promises they made were kept, which is something that people respect. Trust me, I would love to keep rambling on about how great Unknown Worlds is, because honestly, Below Zero, the development is going along steadily, but they made Subnautica 1 absolutely fantastic, so I have no doubt that they can make a worthy follow-up for the game with Below Zero. But let's talk here for a second about, or at least let's get back on track to talk about the point of this video. What makes Subnautica special to me? Well, I have always had a fascination with aquatic life. Ever since I was young, I've been obsessed with aquariums, obsessed with fish. So I played games like Stranded Deep, and games like that put me in an oceanic environment. And this game, even from the earliest alpha stages when I watched videos of it on YouTube, I was genuinely interested in what the world was. And then I started seeing videos of the first sightings of the Reaper, and I was hooked. So I bought it on my Mac and played that for quite a bit at the lowest settings possible, at the worst possible frame rate, but I played a good solid 40 some hours of the game. And even though it didn't look that pretty because my computer couldn't handle it at the time, I still had a blast exploring the world. And then when I finally got the baby I'm using now, I was able to actually bump up the graphics to high up settings. And the game looked great. Sure, optimization was a bit weird sometimes, but the game was still a lot of fun, and I had definitely played through worse. I've experienced worse frame rates than the occasional drop to 40 something, like it's doing here. But Subnautica has always been this step into an alien ocean that I've just adored. And for the longest time, but also, if you know me, been obsessed with disease. I mean, I've mentioned plague doctors and the plague several times in previous videos. So, if you stuck around for a while, you should know that I have a bit of a connection and attachment to disease. So, combining space plague with the ocean, it's a match made in heaven. And then do what I really love in games, in story-based games. What they did is absolutely ingenious, where they made it so the story you get is in PDAs. You have to read and pay attention to piece together what's going on. If you want to see stories that's going on with structures found in the world, you just gotta piece together what's going on. There's occasional voice acting, and there's occasional sort of cutscenes, if you will. But everything's still going on in-game. It's not like the game takes you aside so you can watch the cinematic of whatever's going on. It's not like that. It's just in the game. You're playing the game, and this stuff's happening. In fact, the one time the game actually tells you that it gives you a deadline on when a story event's going to happen is with Sunbeam. Spoilers if you haven't played the game. But that's the only time the game says, okay, you gotta go here and in this amount of time. But even then, if you don't actually show up to the actual Sunbeam event, which in my playthrough, in my Let's Play at least, I unintentionally missed the Sunbeam. So it still happened, but I just didn't see the event. So even if you decide, hey, I'm not gonna actually go to where it's telling me to go to, screw rules or whatever, it still happens. It's not like you not showing up there prolongs the story. No, the story still goes on. You just missed a big part of it. And the game makes it known to you what happened. It's like, okay, large electromagnetic discharge detected on some side of the island, or of the planet. And contact with Sunbeam was lost, or something like that. So even when it's telling you where to go, you don't have to do it. And that's what I like, is that it's not cramming the story down your throat. You read PDA entries and you piece it together. You see what's going on in the world. And then you may unintentionally stumble upon these structures. And stumble upon the story that happened there. It's all on your timing, and you have the freedom to do what you want. You don't even have to do the story if you don't want to. There's no consequences to just playing it like a survival game. If you want to build a giant base and survive predators, go ahead. Sure, you'll still get like transmissions and stuff, but that doesn't mean you have to follow it. You'll still get hints at the story, but you don't have to follow it if you don't want to. Like, you could just fix the Aurora Drive core and that's it. That's all the story stuff you do. You don't even have to try to follow anything else. You don't have to bother with curing yourself or anything like that. The story is really on your own timing and when you want to do it, which is by far one of the best things about the game. And the story itself is really good, so if you want to skip it, all power to you, and you can still have a lot of fun playing Subnautica without the story. But I'm saying you're missing out on a pretty good story too, and a pretty clever crossover. I mentioned earlier about natural selection for a very specific point, other than the fact to point out Unknown World's background. You see, Natural Selection 2 features a disease called the Cara. And guess what's in Subnautica? The Cara bacterium. And let me explain what that is if you don't know. So, in Natural Selection 2, you play as either Marines, which, on several things in the game, you see Altera corporations making an appearance. And also, on the other side of the Space Marines, you have the alien species. It's not precursor, but it's infected. These creatures are infected with a disease called the Cara, which creates these blisters and deforms them into these monsters. And what do you see spread all across the world in Subnautica? Creatures with strange blisters on them that are infected with this same disease. In earlier versions of the game, the disease was called the Carar, spelled C-A-R-A-R. But now, they've changed it to tie in with natural selection. Now it's the Cara. And in one of the most shocking scenes in the game, you see yourself coming down with the final stages of it, which transitions your body into this thing with green blisters all over it. And notice how the skin's coloration changes to having like little vein-like structures going on, glowing orange. The blisters and coloration of monsters infected with Cara in Natural Selection 2 were orange. This is the same bacterium in both games. Although Awesomecrunch, a primarily Subnautica-related YouTuber, made a much better video explaining the difference between Cara and Carar, or at least the connection between the two games as far as the disease goes. So, I may link to his video in the description. If it's not there, then look it up for yourself. It's a very detailed video, and it explains a lot. So I'd highly recommend you go check it out. But one of the other really big parts of Subnautica that makes it special to me is just the overall exploration. Just being able to look, like I said before, just being able to look around in this alien world and seeing strange things like these sea treaders. I mean, I never would have thought to put these things in the game. And I didn't know that I wanted to see them until I actually, found them. And the warpers, too, are freaking terrifying. I don't care what you say. If you're out there in the middle of the ocean and that thing comes after you, you're going to be scared, too. And that's another thing that Subnautica nails brilliantly. It's hidden horror. One of the greatest examples of this is the Reaper Leviathan, of course. It's become basically the face of the game, as far as creatures go. The Reaper is absolutely terrifying. You're in the biome with it, and you just hear in the distance it screaming at you. You could be a long ways away from the thing and not even see it, but you'll just hear its distant growls, and that is pretty scary enough. And then when you actually see the thing, it looks like this, and it can grab your vehicles and shake them around like a rag doll. And in areas like the crash zone when the sky is all weird and it's hard to see, these things can just sneak up on you like it's nobody's business. Subnautica at surface level, but seems just like it's a bright underwater game where you explore coral reefs and it's a bunch of pretty colors and glowy fish. But then you play the game and it turns into freaking Saw, where you're just going through here, it's like, okay, what's gonna happen here? And then you just grabbed out of nowhere by that thing. Yeah, it's not exactly the most relaxing game to play sometimes. Yeah, in some of the safer areas like the shallows and kelp forests, other than the stalkers there, it's still a pretty chill area. But then you just kind of, go a little bit farther, you try to explore into the crash zone, see what's going on. This thing is there! And it will not hesitate to come after you. So it changes it from, okay, I'm just going to, up until the point where you start encountering these things, it's like, oh, it's just a bright, cheery game. Yeah, sure, there's like sharks and stuff, and it's kind of creepy sometimes when I get jump scared, but, I can handle a couple sharks and weird farting manatees. But then you go behind the ship, and you just hear roar coming at you out of nowhere. And the sounds aren't scary enough. The sheer magnitude of the sounds, though, would be scary enough as well, because, I've heard the sharks make growling noises and stuff before, but it's been nothing like this. Sand sharks make their weird noises, but they don't bellow across freaking space and time. This thing does. And then it gets closer and it gets louder. And then out of nowhere you see a shadow of this thing on the sea floor above you, just swooping down out of nowhere, and it grabs your sea moth, which you thought previously was your safe haven because most of the sharks can hurt it, but it's not nearly as bad as getting hit by them. So it's like your safe haven, right? But then this thing can just grab it and shake it around like it's nothing. So, and even destroy it within 2 hits. Meaning, unless you have a repair tool, you're not going to be walking away from this easy peasy lemon squeezy. It's going to hurt you, and it's going to make sure you know that you're screwed over by the time it gets close to you. Which makes encountering these things absolutely horrifying, especially after you learn what it can do. Beforehand, you're like, oh, it's just a giant eel. I like to stay away from it because it's making weird noises and it looks scary. But then once you learn that it can actually screw with your vehicles and stay far away from these things, you learn to fear them. And another thing that Subnautica does brilliantly is captures thalassophobia. Thalassophobia, for those who don't know, is the fear of the ocean. Or more rather, fear of being on the ocean and not knowing what's going on below you. Subnautica does this a lot. Where you're going in between biomes, you start going deeper. You're in areas sometimes where you're up and then you just look down and there's nothing. And if you have thalassophobia, this game's going to be pretty difficult for you to deal with. I mean, you can, of course, play. There's plenty of people who do that, who have thalassophobia. It's a common thing. It's your fear of heights or fear of not... it's like a human nature, fear of the unknown. You just look down and you see just utter darkness. And if you have thalassophobia, stay far away from the dead zone. It's a literal 3,000 meter drop off. So you just look down and you see nothing. So you have no clue what it is that's down there. And then you see these sea monsters that live here. And it's constant fear of, oh crap, is there a Reaper Leviathan directly below me? You get into these big, wide open areas and your mind instantly starts thinking, this looks like a probable place for a giant creature to live. And even when it isn't, like Sparse Reef's pretty big, but there's really no Leviathans there. Unless you count reefbacks, but those are passive, so. But you see these big, wide open areas and you think, something lives here. Something horrible lives here. And in my opinion, one of the scariest things in the game is walking around in a prawn suit on the seafloor of the lava zone. Because it's a gigantic location. And as you go deeper, you start to hear shouts of some unknown predator above you. And like the Reaper, it sounds like it could be anywhere. So you really have no judgment or proper judgment of where this thing is. Of course, the lava zone itself has plenty of creepy things going on already. You have the lava lizards and the warpers constantly swarming you. But you soon learn that the shouting noise isn't being made by a warper or by a lava lizard. I mean, by this point, you should know what a warper sounds like. But the lava lizards, you're like, well, maybe it's just like one of those things. But then you hear it making these weird grunting noise, this weird growling noise. And you realize the shouting I'm hearing is not a lava lizard. There's something big in here. And you just look all around you because it's just a big, wide open area. And it sounds like there's some kind of sea monster just right about to kill you. And then after a while of looking, you see something. And then you're face to face with the sea dragon Leviathan. At this point, you're scared already of being here, right? And then it just goes away for a bit, and you're like, where did it go? You still hear it, and you see that there's a giant super predator down here that's bigger than the Reapers. You've seen Reaper Leviathan skeletons down here. That means that this thing is eating Reapers for literally breakfast. So the predator you used to fear is prey for something much worse. And then it turns its head and looks at you. You know what's coming next. If a Reaper can pick you up, this thing, without even batting its eye, can kill you with no difficulty. And me being an idiot, I want to scan this thing. It works, so I mean, I'm not gonna complain. Next major task is to scan this baby without a stasis rifle. But I can ramble on and on about all this stuff. Subnautica captures terror, it captures exploration, it captures everything I love. And that is why Subnautica is special to me. Thank you for watching, guys. As always, Maxusthebeast is out.